Victoria, and I'm going to take you on a magical quest deep into the caverns and the trenches of Kindle Unlimited to find the worst fairy tale retellings. Today, we're talking about Cinderella. I read Stealing Cinderella, Valeris, an alien dystopian furry Cinderella, and Cinderella and the Vampires. Let's figure out which one is the worst. You will see what I have seen, and you will despair. Let's get going, shall we? So first up, we have Stealing Cinderella. This is an enemies to lover tortured hero romance. That's how it's marketed. It has a lot of 5-star reviews. The cast of characters that we have, we're introduced to our protagonist, Ella, her papa, Henry. She has a British stepmom, Narcissa, and 2 stepsisters, Lavinia and Magnolia. The prologue opens with Ella and the fam going around London late at night. They've just moved from the French countryside, and Ella is like really excited to be there. Narcissa is like over it, kind of understandably, and they get robbed. Ella doesn't want to hand over her dead mother's pendant, even though all of the steps hand over all of their jewels, totally fine, and her father is killed. So it's very like Batman origins we're starting out with. So fast forward a few years later, Ella's all grown up now, and she volunteers her time at an underfunded animal sanctuary. Because she's a rich girl who has no living expenses, she works somewhere else and then donates all of her wages to the animal sanctuary, leaving nothing for herself. Very selfless, kind of stupid. She goes back home after working at the animal sanctuary with a bunch of adorable kittens, and we get this little gem while she's talking with Narcissa. A sinister smile curls across her lips as she watches me squirm. Realistically, we both know she can't truly forbid me from doing anything. I'm 20 years old, but given that she spent all my father's money and has never allowed me to work outside the manor, my options are limited. She hates me, but she isn't willing to let me live a life free of her demands either. To Narcissa, I have only ever been a prisoner working out my debt with a life sentence. She works as a seamstress from the manor, and like she's allowed to work and make her own money and keep her money. She could not live there. She could like save up and like move out, actually. It's really only because she donates all of her money to charity that she can't leave the abusive situation. Like also because she's rich, she also has like wealthy friends and rich connections, like the kind of people who could just get her an internship at daddy's company so she could like make a better wage. Like she could just leave, crash on a couch somewhere and like actually work. Like this is not This problem could be very easily solved if she actually wanted to. She could actually go get a job making more money that she could donate to the animal sanctuary. This girl is an idiot. While I understand that leaving an abusive family is not simple or easy, nobody is looking to Stealing Cinderella for accurate representations of abuse and trauma. Secondly, having a character that lacks agency is just bad writing. You want your character to have enough agency to make a lot of mistakes and hang themselves. That's more fun. Instead of just being helpless and meek, which is less fun. It's just more boring if they're doing less stuff. Regardless of like how those traits work out in real life. Story-wise, you have to be very talented to make that work. And this author isn't. So, rather quickly, a ball is announced. Ella wants to go, and Narcissa tells her she can't, and then Ella calls up her richest friend, and her rich friend is like, yeah, sure, I'll get you a ticket, you can take mine. And that's the whole, there's no, oh, I have to sneak out, oh, I have to find a like, there's none of that. It's just like, okay, here you go. Which, sure. We then meet our beautiful male love interest, Prince Thorson of Norway. Okay, so his whole deal is that he has trouble forming attachments since the incident. It seems like a girl that he dated went to the media to tell everyone what a dick he is, and he feels betrayed. He is now, because of this, branded all women as untrustworthy and beneath him. So, what a good guy. What a cool guy. I'm sure his girlfriend had no cause to do what she did at all. Yeah. Apparently, the only way he even, like, is able to, like, have sex with other women is because he has an identical twin named Calder, who, like, ropes the ladies in, and then they share them. Which, that's not technically twincest, but it feels real close to it. You know? Like, it's right on that line. We find out that his family is forcing him into an arranged marriage. We don't know with who yet. We just know that he needs to get married ASAP. So, by the way, this is set in the modern day. This isn't like the 1800s when an arranged marriage would have been fine. This is like now. So, also Thorsten is like super emo. Let me just... Yeah. He talks like this the whole book. This would have been hot if I was 14. We cut to the ball. Ella is there. She looks real cute. There is apparently an event that everyone has to go to that's like Prince speed dating, which, okay. Like, again, this would make more sense if it was like a fantasy world or the 1700s, but it's the modern day and it's supposed to be like adjacent to our world, and I'm not really buying it. But fine. Prince speed dating, great. Ella manages to sit down across from the Prince of England and is immediately incredibly rude to him. She demands why he hasn't responded to all of the letters that she's written him about the animal sanctuary, and how he's like completely heartless for ignoring all of the helpless. Like, what a sales pitch, Ella. Okay. Like, his eyes are like glazing over. He is just not into it. And while I agree with the fact that he should help out small charities instead of spending his wealth on a third yacht or whatever, I'm kind of on his side on this one. She's out of line. She's making herself out to seem like a real weirdo and frankly not doing the animal sanctuary any favors. Hi, super sexy editing Victoria here. I forgot to mention that she thinks she's sitting down with the Prince of England. It's actually Thorsten. So she's accusing this guy. She's accusing the wrong man of ignoring her. And then he gets upset, and then she realizes she made a mistake, but then keeps going because he's rude back to her, even though it just makes it so much worse that she was immediately rude to him, and also it happened to be the wrong guy, and she like later doubles down on that. So she continues being rude to him, and then he's rude to her back, deservedly, and she gets up and he like grabs her wrist, which is not cool. She calls him a heartless wretch, and like storms out, leaving her shoe behind, and he is pissed. He like chases her. That was like the worst thing she could possibly have said to him, that he's just such a heartless man. Like, okay. So he finds her shoe and somehow uses it to track down her house. Narcissa and the girls intercept him, and they kind of push Lavinia towards him and kind of like make a little deal thing so that he can date her for some reason. None of this is very clear, and frankly, I'm not interested in the details. It's a bad subplot. So after that, he goes to the animal shelter, even though Narcissa didn't tell him Ella was there or that Ella exists, because obviously she just wants him to focus on Lavinia, who she knows was at the ball. She doesn't know that Ella was at the ball, right? But he tracks her down, and then he sticks a needle full of ketamine in her neck and kidnaps her. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. I was thinking this was going to be like a sweep her off her feet, kidnap her away from all of these people that hate her. No, this is a legit kidnapping. And it gets so much worse. How romantic. So she wakes up in the sex dungeon, because of course she does, and they make a deal that he's going to send a shitload of money to the animal sanctuary if she has sex with him for the next 2 months. It feels real consensual and nice. Here. She agrees to do that because she doesn't have another choice because he kidnapped her. And she's kind of tied up in the moment. So they make that deal. Meanwhile, his family is like super excited about Lavinia because he's like, yes, finally, just like marry someone, marry literally anybody. We don't care. Just like get married to her immediately. We're so excited for you. I'm starting to think that it's because his whole family knows that he's a giant weirdo who kidnaps people. And they just want him to settle down and not lock people up in his sex dungeon anymore. I'm starting to think that's what's happening. We alternate between scenes of like him R-wording Ella, who seems to really be into it. So that's nice for her. Apparently she really likes it rough, which is also good because that's what he's doing. So we get those scenes intercepted with like boring shit with Lavinia that nobody cares about. I think we're supposed to feel sorry for this evil man because he has to go on a date with a woman who's not nice. Like that's in any way equivalent to making women suffer. I'm not feeling super sympathetic personally. The book is definitely trying to set it up that like this is a non-consensual to consensual relationship that like develops into like a beautiful love story, which is absolutely not how that happens in real life. That's not how that works. But because this is a work of fiction, we're just gonna go with it, because if I have to do a disclaimer about how this is bad and wrong every single time, we will never get through this review. They're trying to set it up also like Thorsten is this extreme dom bad guy person, but honestly most of the play that they do is pretty tame aside from the fact that she's kidnapped. Like if this was truly a consenting relationship, it wouldn't really seem that extreme. There's some spankings, a little bit of butt stuff, some flogging. Like it's really not that intense. Like I feel like this is like 50 Shades of Grey territory, like not that extreme, which like there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that the author thought she was really going places when she wasn't necessarily. So sometimes Ella gets like breakfast or whatever with the twin, who is a huge creep. I'm just gonna share this little tidbit. Regardless, I don't think I need to tell you that whatever happens in this house stays in this house. Something has shifted in Calder. I notice it in the tightness around his eyes, but I don't understand what he's trying to say exactly. What do you mean? You won't go to the media, he says. That's what I mean. I would never. I shake my head, a little offended that he'd even think I'd do something like that. It wouldn't be the first time a woman has broken that promise, he shrugs. I'm sorry, what do you expect happens when you kidnap someone? That they're just gonna like roll with it, and that it's an emotional betrayal of them to be like, hey, this guy abused me. The level of delusion. And then Ella being like, no, of course I would never. Because, like, what else is she supposed to say? But it seems like she genuinely believes, like, that would be a breach of trust between her and her kidnapper. And I don't understand that logic. I don't get it. Okay, so after this wonderful conversation, she goes down with both Thorsten and Calder into the sex dungeon again. They give her MDMA and she like immediately orgasms, which is not how that drug works, by the way. And then they're like both about to have sex with her, but she like essentially like leaps on Thorsten, is like, no, you're the only one I want to fuck me. And like he's very touched by this in a way that I don't think was earned. He finds this like really endearing and intense, and like, oh my god, she's like madly in love with me, and I've never felt this connection with someone before. She wants me specifically. Like maybe Thorsten, if you let a woman get to know you, they would pick you over your brother. But it seems like Calder's the only one with like a shred of charm who like actually speaks to people instead of just kidnapping them. These men need so much therapy. also, there's this beautiful quote that I need to share with you. I'm full of his life force, but my soul is empty. Because she's madly in love with him now. The next day, Ella starts a fight with him, with Thorsten, about whether or not he's sleeping with anybody else. Imagine demanding to be exclusive with your kidnapper. Be like, I'm not doing this kidnapping thing anymore. You're gonna be kidnapping other girls. Like, oh no. And like, I think Ella's been there for like a week. So this is moving fast. She hasn't had time to get Stockholm Syndrome. After that argument, he gives her a cell phone so that she can call people, which is just a massive case for having a code word with your friends to tell them when you've been terribly kidnapped and need assistance. But she just like talks to people unsupervised and doesn't say anything because she made this deal about the animal sanctuary, and apparently Thorsten has been sending the money to the animal sanctuary like he said he would, so that's nice, I guess. She also realizes that he's left this like blue bottle of something by the bed, and she Googles what it is, and it's poison. Which is not great. He's just left a bottle of poison by the bed. Which again is the point where I would be calling for help. It's like, oh, he's left the murder weapon right there. Let's maybe not wait around for that. We have another conversation with Calder about how she's not going to go to the media. Again, like, it feels like the author is really expecting me to buy the fact that people going to the media about this is a huge betrayal. And, like, I'm sorry, I'm not sold on that. Then we have this awful, nonsensical third act breakup where Thorsten finds out that Ella's related to Narcissa. And he's, like, completely feeling betrayed. Which I don't understand, because he had to know that she lived with Narcissa because he went to their house, you know? I don't understand. I really don't understand. Also, they haven't been doing a whole lot of talking, so like I'm not sure how it could have come up. Ella hasn't even known that he's met Narcissa. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's like there's so many things to argue about. Why does it have to be something completely made up? You know, like, why can't they be arguing about how she wants to go home and she doesn't want to be kidnapped anymore? What about that? What about that argument? For some reason, Lavinia then finds her in the dungeon, beats the shit out of her for no reason at all, and then Thorsten burns Ella's childhood home down, and Ella's, like, so grateful about that. Nobody died as a result of the fire. They all just had severe disfiguring third-degree burns. So, that's nice. Once Ella's recovered from her injuries from Lavinia, Thorsten proposes. And she says yes. So that's something. This book took me on a wild ride and I enjoyed none of it. So, let's move on to the furry Cinderella, shall we? Valeris is a sci-fi dystopian set in this world of lion creatures. So they're like half human, half lion hybrids. And there's like technology, lots of technology. There's like hover cars and cameras everywhere, but it also feels very medieval in a lot of ways. So just like trying to paint that picture of this world. This is 19th in the series, but it is a standalone. So I'm sure there's a lot of world building that I'm missing here. But frankly, based on the cover, I think I can catch up. Lion men with abs. Got it. Our main character is Evania, who is just turning 18 that day. It is her mating day, and there's a tradition on this planet that involves releasing a bunch of white flowers down a river. You get in your white dress, you go and pluck a flower, and if you get the red flower, that means you're inherently gonna marry a prince. It seems like the way that mating day usually works is that it's like a bartering, trading, bidding system for women, so women don't get any choice in this, but the flower tradition is like part of it. No one has picked the crimson flower in 400 years, so I'm sure it won't happen today. Evania is a little nervous because she doesn't want to really just be passed off to anyone, understandably, and she really doesn't want the crimson flower because she doesn't want to, like, be torn away from her home and all of that, which is less understandable. Because, like, her family is poor, so she should kind of want the money. But she really doesn't want it, because then she'd have to marry, like, this really hot prince guy. Guess what happens? Yeah. So our prince is... God, what's his name? So our prince's name is Valeris. He is really not happy about having to marry some peasant lady. To his credit, he's not, like, seeing her on the cameras and is, like, immediately smitten with her. He doesn't do that whole insta-love thing. He's like, yeah, no, this is, like, some country bumpkin. I don't find her attractive. Great. This is my life now. So Evania is taken to the palace, and she's given all of these baths and these fancy clothes, and so far this is just giving, honestly, more like Esther story vibes. This isn't giving Cinderella at all in any other way than it's rags to riches, which, like, the original story wasn't even rags to riches, it was riches to rags to riches. Just fundamentally different, I think. But yeah, there's no ball, there's no losing of a slipper, there's no mice helping you build your gown, there's no step anything. Her mother is still alive. So no Cinderella vibes at all. But this is billed as a Cinderella story, so we'll go with it. The mating ceremony begins less than 3 hours later, which involves, like, this big, essentially, wedding reception, like a wedding ceremony, a wedding reception, and then she's, like, taken to the bedroom. She walks into the wedding ceremony to finally meet the prince for the first time, and to his credit, he's like, she looks lovely. It's not like, wow, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life, I must have her. It's like, oh, she looks nice cleaned up. Okay. And he sees that she's kind of terrified, and he feels bad for her and, like, tries to calm her down a little bit, which is nice. He's not a complete monster, unlike other protagonists that we've seen. Eventually, she's taken to the bedchamber, and they're alone, and they have a moment to talk. Evania is really pissed that she doesn't get a choice in this. She's feeling like everything is out of control, and she doesn't like it, but she insists that she gets to choose who she mates with, and kind of threatens him with a little paring knife, and he finds it really... He, like, respects her. He doesn't find it cute. He respects her, which is nice. And they just, like, end up talking and getting to know each other, and she falls asleep halfway through him talking to her, which I respect as well. I feel like all of these kinds of books try to give you a spunky heroine, and very few of them actually succeed at that, and I think this author did a good job of making the main character spunky without making her seem like she's having a tantrum. She's just standing up for herself, and it works. The next morning, the prince brings her breakfast in bed and is like, I've ordered you some really hot clothes, you're gonna put them on, and then we're gonna go spend a day kind of getting to know each other. I have, like, a bunch of surprises planned, and it's genuinely really nice. They have like a lovely day. He takes her on his hover yacht and takes her back to her hometown so she can, like, hug her mom and, like, show him where she grew up, and it's, like, genuinely really sweet. He gives her, as a wedding present, a knife. Like, a really nice knife that she can have so she feels safe. It's like, oh god. I actually liked this book. I don't really like romances as a rule, but, like, this was genuinely cute. I felt like I was actually rooting for this couple. Am I a furry now? What have I done? The sex scene that they have later is a good chunk of the book, but it's really well led up to, and, like, the author is really good at building that anticipation. Like, the slow build of, like, slowly physically getting closer and closer until it's, like, actually consensual sex, and it's really nice. It's like, the sex scene is very vanilla, but, like, it's nice. It works. It's well written. It's fine. I'm definitely a furry now, aren't I? Yeah. Well. And they have a cute little epilogue that's her announcing her pregnancy at the next mating day ceremony. This was actually good, despite the cover. If this is, like, your kind of thing, go for it. So now we finally get to talk about Cinderella and her vampires. I'm not gonna lie, this is absolutely the worst one, hands down. The writing style of this book, not just the plot and characters, but like the actual writing of it, is incredibly amateur hour. This author has either no self-awareness or just straight up does not care. There are so many typos, so many filler words. She can't even consistently spell her characters' names right. It's like wading through word soup. There's no voice at all. There's no sense of like characters at all. The plot is terrible, but like, people have rated this book 5 stars. Our incredibly gorgeous main character, Cindy, owns and tends bar at the Nightingale. It's a bar that people like. The first time we see her there, she has to deal with a couple of crazies, including one drunk guy who's like ranting about trying to start a civil war. She kicks him out. He was asking her before about where the Dark Prince was, and she's like, I don't know. If there was a Dark Prince, he'd be at that abandoned mansion. And he's like, yes, I know. And then starts trying to start a civil war in her bar. And apparently this scene with him just like standing on top of the bar and trying to rile people up ruins her bar's reputation so much that the bar is dead for like weeks afterwards. She struggles really hard to get customers to come in, which feels like if your bar is one bad drunk guy away from closing forever, you got other problems. It's not that guy's fault. In this world, we also see that there are witches, shifters, and vampires. The other side is the parallel plane of existence where people like him and other shifters and the witches lived. The human realm has gotten overcrowded, and keeping their existence secret was growing more difficult. Every year, more and more of their kind left, preternatural creatures and witches alike. The humans who lived there called it Haremland. Okay. You couldn't call it literally anything else, could ya? Our first leading man is a vampire named Silas. He's like the big daddy of the vampires. He's the Dark Prince, presumably. He's roaming around the city one night, just doing his vampire thing, and he smells something really intriguing in the air, and he follows the scent and finds out that it's Cindy. Cindy has a really intriguing smell that can be smelled from miles away. He is immediately desperate to get to know her, is madly in love with her almost immediately. Like, he feels incredibly possessive over her after speaking to her for like ordering a drink, which I don't know if this is normal in paranormal romance, where it's just like, yes, I've sensed my mate, it is the one, but like feels a little fast. It feels a little rushed. A few days later, after this incident, when the bar is empty, a mysterious man who we find out later is called Xavier. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. No one in real life has that name. He comes into the bar and demands to know where the drunk guy was and says that he disappeared mysteriously. Cindy is like, oh shit, well, I told him to go to that weird mansion. I should probably go check this out because it's completely my fault. So she goes to this abandoned mansion because she has nothing better to do with her night. Tells no one where she's going. This girl needs to get a hobby, maybe crochet. In the next chapter, we get to see who has kidnapped this guy. It's Brock. Brock the vampire. He's blonde. I imagine him with frosted tips. The author didn't specify frosted tips, but I imagine frosted tips. There's like a brief conversation about absolutely nothing between Brock and Cullen, and then we get to see Cindy just prowling through the manor. She's like, gosh, if I were gonna kidnap someone, I'd put them in the basement. Let me find the basement. Girl, just call the cops. Just call the cops. I'm not trying to victim blame here, but this girl would be the first out in a horror movie. Just like immediately. Anyway, she runs into Brock before she can make it downstairs, and he's like, you look delicious. And Cindy is really offended by this. He broke into his house knowing that he was probably a bad dude. Cindy starts like yelling at him, and Xavier, who is about to enjoy a beautiful meal consensually, comes out and is like, what are you doing here? He thinks she's literally the most beautiful creature he's ever seen, which, like, that's not... You must not get out much. It's like, exceptionally hot women are not that hard to find, actually. if you look around. Lots of women are hot, actually. It's not that hard. Also, I feel like if she was that pretty, actually, she wouldn't be tending bar. She'd be like, at the very least, a very successful stripper. I mean, come on. There's this terrible, long, drawn-out sequence where Brock and Xavier try to figure out why she's there, and they can't figure out why she's risking her life for this man that she's met once who created a disturbance in her bar, because there is no good reason. They're very confused by this, which is reasonable because I'm also confused by this. We're all confused. Like, the writing is so bad. It's so bad. They also keep describing her like this. First of all, if you say that she's spunky, it's courageousness is pretty adjacent to that. You don't need that's we get it. We get it. Also, she's not spunky. She's an idiot. You only get to be called courageous if what you're doing is not detrimental to the health and well-being of yourself and other people. Silas eventually comes in. He, breaks this up. He takes her to his office. He offers her a drink. She orders a rum and coke from an undead prince who could presumably provide her with at least some very nice wine. It just really doesn't feel like a drink a bartender would order from a vampire, you know? So he gives her a drink. She takes, a single sip, and instead of having a conversation, they just bone. Silas kisses her once, and Cindy is immediately like, well, it won't be my first one-night stand, and it certainly won't be my last, and, no sense of self-preservation, no sense of safety. She's just, immediately into it. So she has, 3 sad, foreplayless orgasms. It really doesn't seem like, actually, the sex is bad, but we're supposed to think it's good, but it seems bad. And then she's like, oh, well, I had an amazing time. I'm just gonna fall asleep in this house full of strange men that I broke into in the middle of the night, who I think have kidnapped people, who I know are vampires. She wakes up at home in her own bed and is confused. That is the least of her problems, that they know where she lives, frankly. There's still no allusions at all to Cinderella, other than the fact that her name is Cindy and the guy, Silas, is called the Dark Prince, which there's no sense that he actually is a prince. This feels about as official as a TikTok investment bro calling himself a king. So this shouldn't qualify as a Cinderella retelling. There's no ball, there's no slipper, there's nothing. Silas comes and visits her at the bar again. They have a nothing conversation, and then he decides to follow her home and jerk off to her while he stands watching her from the shadows without her consent. I don't think anything could turn me off more. Also, he's already banged her. They could, hook up again. You don't need to do... That's creepy. That's really creepy. And instead of going home that night, Cindy sneaks into the mansion again. She deserves to be murdered at this point, I think. Just, not to victim blame, but she deserves it. She finally finds the basement and sees that Cullen is chained up. It takes her an hour to find lockpicking tools, which she does not specify what those are. And apparently she knows how to pick locks because she's a heroine in a romance novel. So she picks his locks, sees that he's a vampire, and lets him go anyway. This is a big problem, it turns out, because baby vampires in this land are, really ravenous and indiscriminate in their hunger. So she's just, let a really bad murderer out into the streets. The men eventually find her. They explain that she's messed up a little bit, and in order to protect her, she should get marked by all of them instead of just being marked by Silas. So she bones all of them. Not at once. The sex, again, does not seem to be particularly good. She keeps referring to her lady bits as my sex multiple times per paragraph, which is wildly unappealing. Xavier also calls her vag magnificent, which seems like an overstatement for anyone's bits. The thing about having her hook up with all of these guys is that it's just not fun. Because they all share kind of the same personality, There's really nothing that the author has told us that differentiates them other than hierarchy. It just feels like having 3 cups of vanilla ice cream in a row, and we could be having 3 different flavors. Like, if there was like one goth one and one cottagecore one and one dark academia one, like, give us something. Like, that would be fun. Then I'd want to like sample all the flavors. But if you're just giving us old vanilla, new vanilla, medium vanilla, it's like, what is the point of having 3 of them if they're all just gonna be the exact same in bed and you're not gonna do them all together, you know? Anyway, so now that she's fully protected, Cindy allows herself to be used as bait. There's a big vampire fight that basically destroys the mansion because it's a little rundown anyway. And afterwards, the guys are like, well, we're homeless now. Cindy's like, well, I can't possibly go back to my life as it was knowing that vampires exist, so I guess we're all just gonna hang out together. And they're like, yay. This was bad. It made no sense. Everyone involved was terrible and made terrible decisions the entire time. I really was rooting for the drunk rambling guy the whole time to kill them all. But we are done. And I never have to read those books ever again. Thank you so much for coming on this wild journey with me. I hope you had fun. I'm certainly scarred for life and I got a new kink, so there's that. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much to the authors of all of these books for providing us with entertainment, particularly the one who wrote Valeris. Extra thank you to you for being good at what you do. Let me know if you would like to see me do a different fairy tale. Hopefully there would be more actual fairy tale tie-ins in the next one. We will see. But yeah,